Some people coming in. Welcome, everybody. Episode 2 of The Drop in the House. We got Frank Oriti, our good friend from Cleveland, Ohio, fantastic painter. Me and MK are chilling. We're good to go. We're in the second week. We're trying to increase our tech capabilities. I have my headphones on this week. I did not have my headphones on last week. MK was like, dude, you got to get headphones. So
we both got headphones this week, yeah.
Both got headphones. I do not, however, have my microphone yet. I did order a microphone, and it is not an essential right now, understandably so. So Amazon was like, you're going to have to wait for it. They got to get more important things out there. So hopefully by this time next week, I'll have better audio.
Mine was important, though. Mine was important.
MK got his.
Mine's essential. Masks, yes, medicine, microphone.
Yes, he's got it. He's got it good to go. So we're going to open up the show with just asking how we're doing, what's going on. MK, we're in week 2 here in New York. What's holding up on your end over there?
Week 2. It feels like week 30. I feel like all the days are definitely a blur right now. I have no idea what's going on. Trying to figure out how much toilet paper we have, trying to figure out what we're going to be eating for dinner. We got no meat in the house. I went to give the kids dinner last night, and all I had was 3 hot dogs and 12 fish sticks. So they had surf and turf for dinner last night. Very fancy. Like yeah, very fancy. It's exactly like Chop. It's like 12 fish sticks, 3 hot dogs, 3 pieces of bread. What are you going to make? And go. And we had surf and turf, so that was interesting. And now the number one stress for us is figuring out how we're going to feed these 3 kids and trying to get them some meat into their diet, something like that. But it's all a blur, but we're getting by just like everybody else. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah. I've had. I'm going to admit, I've had some of my Jack Torrance Shining-esque moments with my children. Luckily, my axes are locked away in the garage for the time being. But we're holding down. We're doing what we can. I don't think it's easy for anybody right now. We're doing the best we can under the circumstances, and we're trying to stick to what people are telling you to do. For everybody's safety. And we'll see. Hopefully, this. If we can all stay smart about things, maybe we'll all figure it out and get this done. But Frank, what's going on, my friend, in Cleveland? We have no idea what's going on out there. Frank is in Cleveland, Ohio, folks. Frank, what's going on locked in your apartment there?
Thanks for having me. First of all, it's very cool to be a part of this, and a break from the everyday lockdown sort of thing. This is week 2 for me as well. I am in my very small apartment. I do still have studio access, but I've kind of been trying to do my part and lay low. So I've brought some materials back to my apartment and have kind of made this my apartment studio, my studio, and just kind of using this time to experiment a little bit with some new apartment safe materials, acrylics and watercolors, things that I don't usually make use of, but supplies that I've been sitting on for some time. So
and you've been posting that in Instagram. Mike, we got an image. Mike found this image. This is pure genius, what I've seen from this man. He is not only a talented artist, but he is like the MacGyver of supplies. Frank, what is that?
That is your basic contact carrying case with some India ink, another material that I don't usually work with, but doing some small, just sort of playing around with, making marks. And it's funny, I posted that and a tattoo artist that I'm connected Two responded saying he did the same exact thing yesterday. So, creative minds
Yes,
everywhere.
Frank,
we are all connected.
Frank, the
Yeah.
question is, where are your contacts going right now?
So for the longest time, those things were very hard to come by, and now it's like every time you buy a new solution set, they send you another. So I've got like 10 of these things. I could have my own full watercolor setup with those.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. And it's actually, you bring up a good point because, Mike and I both being art educators, and I see there's a couple of art educators in here with us now. Like, our biggest concern with this distance learning thing is not knowing what our kids have access to.
Right.
So when you're trying to give them assignments and you're trying to give them something that they can all be successful with, it makes it so difficult because we don't know what they have in their house. It's kind of like Survivor for artists right now.
Right. I was commenting on how it reminded me a lot of being in these early, first year foundations college classes where it's 2D foundations, 3D foundations. You're given a certain set of materials, and it's like, make what you can make, think outside of the box, and let's talk about the hows and the whys.
Yeah.
I think when I sort of knew that I was going to be spending a lot of time in this space, I sort of invited the challenge of, what can I do with the materials that I do have, and how can I keep myself entertained? How can I make this fun? I think for a lot of people who are, in the creative world, in the creative community, spending time making things by yourself is not that big of a change up. But for those who have studio spaces and or families, kind of throwing all of those things into the blender into the same space is probably a very real challenge.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. Mike can definitely attest to that.
Right.
There's definitely people on this feed right now that I can see who can definitely attest to that too.
Exactly.
Mike is pulling up some of the images from Frank's Instagram feed because he's also a part-time comedian.
I can't take credit for this, but I'm doing my part of being a conduit to the other creatives out there, right?
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, we've known Frank for a couple of years now. He was one of our original visiting professional artists. He Skyped with our seniors a couple of years ago back at Limerick High School. So we're very aware of not only his talent but his humor and his sense of humanity. He's got a great vibe. His feed is always really interesting, and he's also a great promoter of other artists. Like, if you look at his stuff, a lot of his stories, especially lately, you've been promoting a lot of people that you admire and you like. Tell us a little bit about, some of the inspirations you're getting from people that are out there.
Yeah, a lot of it is just things that I'm looking at, things that I'm coming across on the day to day. It's also a good way to just, like you said, promote other artists who I feel are either under promoted or things I just am really digging lately. I came across an artist late last night whose name is not going to come to me, but I shared his work, which you can go on my stories and see. Very cool printmaking stuff, and it's a good reminder to me to sort of I would consider it research, but you can call it whatever you like. Just going out and discovering new things. And I think now it's a little different because you can't physically do that. So things like Instagram and Facebook continue to play a big part in how we look at things and just what we're looking at in general.
I,
Yeah.
I love that. I love when you guys share stuff in your stories. I know that, yeah, Frank, you do that a lot. I find a lot of people through your stories.
Cool.
Casey, obviously,
Yeah,
Sarah Ainsley, who's a former student, always shares artists in her story too. And I love that. I think it's like one of the best ways to find people, especially people that you like or people that you would normally wouldn't, search for or find. It's like finding gold every once in a while in people's Instagram stories, which is cool.
Yeah,
absolutely. I
it's
was
like
going to say Casey was a big inspiration of mine on that end because she was doing that a lot. And I'm like, oh, that's a very cool idea. And same as you guys were saying, I've found a bunch of artists that way. I think I actually found Casey's work in an art magazine that I had been following for some time, and then years later was at an art fair and got to see it and sort of stumbled across it. And when that kind of stuff happens, it is really, really cool and
it
really
is.
inspiring.
It is, and she's very well known for doing her Who I Follow Fridays. That's how I follow. I find a lot of people through something like that, and I know she's doing a really cool thing now where she's promoting graduate students who are losing out on their MFA shows because of schools being closed. Can we open her audio real quick, Mike?
Yeah, we could, sure.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
we won't put you on video, but I do want to thank you for joining us. I know Frank, and there's a huge amount of mutual admiration between you and Frank and between you and and it just, can you tell us just really quickly about how you're promoting too, because it's such a great thing you're doing.
Well, first of all, hi Frank.
Hey,
This is like super fun. I'm like stitching while I'm like gonna hear what he's up to. No, I just think I think of like Instagram, it can get so narcissistic and it's just like me. So I try like to keep my stuff within the top 2 scrolls. But then I think of it as an opportunity to, get the attention off yourself. And like, I think artists always know who's the best people to follow. And so it's kind of a way to be like an art mom and, just show who I'm looking at. I find that so interesting to see who other people are looking at too.
Yeah, it's you can be a mom and an artist as well, right? Hashtag mom and artist.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. How's St. Louis, by the way? How are you holding up in St. Louis?
It's good. I think we're actually on our 3rd week. I'm like losing track. The days seem like they're like 50 hours long.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just weird. I don't know, Frank, do you find it hard to concentrate on work? I find it very, like, my hands are busy, but I can't put my finger on what this feeling is or why it's so hard to concentrate on the actual art making.
yeah, I've sort of reverted to, I was telling somebody this today, actually. I've reverted back to working really late. I was up till about 4 in the morning watching movies and painting, and I'm in a very, very small space right now. So it's been kind of difficult to concentrate, and yet the days kind of fly by for me. It's more so I'm left asking, well, I don't know where the last 8 hours went. I better start painting now. And then, it seems like I paint from maybe 7 or 8 p.m. until the early hours of the morning. So I'm
like being in grad school all over again.
Exactly. I'm used to painting. I have been out of work the last couple of weeks. My work has shut down. And so normally I'm working my day job from about 7 a.m. to 3:30, and then I usually get to the studio by 4 or 5 p.m. and work until about 10 or 11 at night. And that's usually how my days go. And then weekends, I'm just in the studio all the time. So now that I'm just in my apartment all the time, I'm still trying to get a schedule figured out, but I am not. Casey, what is your, do you work out of your home?
Yeah, my studio's on the 3rd floor of my house.
Okay.
So I have all 4 of my kids home, but the older 3 are kind of, old enough to do their own thing. And I just man the 11-year-old. And fortunately, I'm working on like a really large embroidery again. That's like 6 by 6 feet. So it's literally like I don't have to think about what I'm doing every day, which is really nice. And I found it very stressful because now everyone's in my workspace being home, that I was like, I couldn't get up there at 10. So I just now leave the morning to kind of like do chores, go for walks, help my kid with his home, his schooling. And then I get started about noon or 1. And I just don't stress out about it. Try to get at least 4 hours, 5 hours in the studio.
Yeah, I think
So,
for me, having a job is what provides that sort of structure for me,
yeah.
and kind of forces me to say, okay, I have this amount of time to get ready for the next day. I have this amount of time to cook, eat, whatever, and then the rest of the time is going to be in the studio and for making.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about also, some of you aren't maybe not familiar with Frank's style or what he does, and Mike has MK's grabbed some images. So if he pulls some up, and maybe Frank, you can walk us through what you do and what your style is and where your influences are. I think that you have a great feel for classical painting. You are a traditionalist.
Mhm.
Can I say that? Is that fair to say?
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah.
Um, I think um, the figurative stuff is I was trained as a figure painter, and so I think for the past, well, maybe since like 2009, 2010, um, I was making portraits of people that I was surrounded by, coming from the suburbs of Cleveland, where I'm from, and they were portraits of working class people who had went away to college and then or military and then returned back to our hometown. And this was right after the economy sort of tanked in 2008. So there was a big struggle and a lot of uncertainty of what people coming out of college were going to do. And a lot of us ended up in the same situation of trying to figure that out. And that stuck out to me at a time when I was trying to figure out what I was going to paint in grad school. So that was what I gravitated towards. And I ended up making a lot of portraits over the next probably 6, 7 years. And then I think by the time I turned maybe 30, 31, 32, that conversation started changing a bit. The portraits became more about the look and attitude of these working class people. A lot of my friends are creatives and tattoo artists, barbers, bakers, photographers, painters, musicians, and um, from there, I transitioned into painting more materials and still life objects, denim and leather jackets, items that had become sort of this, what I was referring to as the working class uniform. And I got really interested in teaching myself how to paint these materials and um, just really being able to uh, show the visual history that these objects had sort of experienced, all the rips and tears and scuffs. I got really interested in painting, and I think even more recently, in the last maybe handful of months, I transitioned into painting sneakers and really investigating that culture, um, more so as these beautiful objects that contain many different um, materials and um, colors and all of these really beautiful things that I love painting, all contained in one object. So that has kind of kept me busy. I'm still painting an occasional portrait, but it has not been my main focus.
Right, right.
If
It's
that sort of
interesting.
brings us up to speed.
You brought up the whole sneaker culture, because I know I'm looking at the screen and there is a huge sneakerhead in our midst right now, Miss Forey. I know you are probably smiling on the other end of this. Maybe we can get her audio on.
Yeah, sure.
My Jill Forey there. I just
You made me
recently
laugh.
Jill
I started laughing.
Jill has been on MTV's recent season of Wild. Was it Wild and Out?
So I keep calling it Chopped for sneakers. If anyone watches like the cooking shows, so MTV came out with this idea called Sneaker Wars, in which they contact a bunch of customizers, and you go on, and you have a random theme, terrible themes, but like which makes it more challenging. Some sort of like hidden element or material you have to incorporate into it, and then a shoe you've never used before. So I mean, they give you the shoe ahead of time, but they make it seem insider secret. They make it seem like you're doing it right there on the set, and it's just like a competition show to like see who makes a cooler shoe. But it's funny that you called me a sneakerhead, because I would never call myself that.
See, I think that you really are, because you have a since we've met you, you've been customizing sneakers for a long time. So I would think that you have to have a respect for the culture to be that involved in it.
I'm in the sense of that's why I was excited when you sent me this invite, because then I got to look at Frank's work last night, and I was looking at the sneaker paintings, and I look at it in very much in the same lens of respect for the shoe itself, and the like all the different materials that can go onto it, and like the construction of a shoe. I personally, on my own feet, I wear checkerboard Vans pretty much every day. I'm pretty boring, and even to work. So, but as the shoe himself, I think they're just amazing works of art. And I know friends who are like literal like cobblers and making shoes, and like I'm getting into that as well. And just like the experimentation with the materials, and it's a hard medium to work with, and but it's super fun. Also, hearing your accent is making me so homesick.
Yeah,
the second you started talking, I was like,
out in LA. Jill's out in LA, so sweet.
Very cool.
I'm
also very hesitant to refer to myself as a sneakerhead as well. Just that word coming out of my mouth seems a little silly for me to refer to myself as. For me, it's much more of an appreciation of the culture, as you said, and just having something to investigate and research, and that was something that I had that idea being introduced to in school, where it's like, what are you interested in? What do you enjoy looking at? How can you research it? And then how does that lead to you creating something? And I think the culture is that for me. I have been kind of dabbling in buying things here and there, but it's much more of, I sort of ignore the trends. I pay attention to them, but in terms of buying, I don't, it's like I like what I like, and I think that's part of what makes the culture fun and exciting and new to me. It's like finding what you're into and either making work from that or trying to chase after something that's hopefully not too expensive.
Yeah, no, but I think what makes it so interesting though is when you have that collision of culture where you have, I mean, when we say sneakerheads, we're thinking of kids that stand in line for Supreme for like days on end, and none of us are at that point. I think we're all a little past that stage where I'm going to wait 7 days online for a pair of sneakers. But just that whole community of being creative with an object, or whether it's documenting the actual object or using the object itself, I think there's definitely a connection amongst all of us with just having an appreciation for that, which is why I asked Jill to come on and say something, because I think it's, even though, she's she's working on the actual sneaker and you're painting the sneaker, I think there's definitely a connection somewhere there for the general appreciation of the actual item. I think it's just a very interesting approach.
Well, thank
Absolutely.
you. Bye, Tom.
Of course.
Jill, so are you painting on the sneakers, or are you like dismantling and forming them, all of that sort of stuff?
My main market, I guess, or clientele, if you will, would be just customizing paint, like doing paintings on the shoe itself.
Okay.
Primarily, I've been getting more into leathers lately, but
I'm gonna find mine.
On my own, just for fun, I've experimented with like taking them apart, putting them back together, using different materials, just because I want to kind of take it up a notch and mix it up. And then also just like adding to a shoe, not necessarily taking apart, but like what else you can do to create it more sculpturally, but then so it's still wearable. Oh my God.
You didn't think I was going to get rid of these. This was my 40th birthday present, courtesy of Jill Forey, who made my face.
The beardless
Yes,
Tom
beardless.
Senna.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was like six years ago now.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. 6 years.
Well, oh yeah, sorry, I put your 40. I mean, I moved a while ago.
Yes, that's it. But yes, that's what she does. We still have the pair that you made for our department hanging up prominently in my room also.
Well, you usually don't get attached to a leave replacement, but that was hard to leave.
Yes, we had a wonderful experience with you.
It was fun.
Kids, every time the kids come in, they're like, "Oh, who made those?" And they're hanging up over the doorway. I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was Miss Ford."
Yeah.
Like,
I will say
movie
though,
cool.
I'm glad to be out of high school. I love my little guys.
It's a whole different world. Now,
whole different
LA,
world.
you guys have been canceled for the whole year, right?
We just found out last night, so
Yeah.
Wow.
figuring that out.
So they don't have anything in plans for plans in place yet. There's nothing.
This week we had like a week. I've been on meetings like this for probably like 4 hours a day, just kind of doing kind of figuring out logistics, because it's the majority of the entirely low income community. So we're just kind of figuring out who has access to what, like you were saying before. I was going to say, I love the contact lens idea thing, because I have the same thing. I have tons of them. And I was like, clearly Tom has a higher budget than me, because I use those all the time for little palettes. But yeah, so I oversee all the art department for the whole district, not our district, but our charter. So I have to kind of oversee everything and make sure everybody has access to something. So that's the goal right now.
Yeah. So that everybody's dealing with things in different ways. So what I want to lead that into is Frank, where do we feel like this is going to lead for the arts after this? Everything is, we talked a little bit about how, back in history, we've had the Black Plague, and the Black Plague led to the Renaissance and this blossoming of art and music and writing. And do we think that this is going to happen again for us as artists? I mean, if there's any silver lining to this thing, what's your opinion on something like that?
I think it will be a little different for everybody. Like we were kind of mentioning before, artists who have at-home studios versus people who have to go to a place and make something. I think for everyone as a whole, I think that this proves how fragile things can be, and I hope that whatever people end up making after this sort of wraps up, I hope that it's difficult to let me say this. It's easy to disregard ideas and let go of things, or tell yourself that's stupid, or that's not a good idea, or I'll do that later. But I hope that the fragility of this whole scenario reminds us to not put things off, and to go for that idea or go for that project, because we don't know how long we will be in a position to make things. Period.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice, Frank. I mean, just not even just for art, but all around in general. I thought that's excellent. Yeah.
Like starting a podcast, MK.
Like starting a podcast. Yeah.
No, exactly. I like we had been talking earlier before we started and earlier in the week just about how the things have how much things have changed in terms of how we're looking at things and how we're interacting. I was kind of making the joke about how we're going back to AOL Instant Messenger days of communicating, and just the amount of phone calls that I've made or have gotten, and it's really interesting to see how galleries are taking things much more virtual. I think depending on location, a lot of galleries and museums were already sort of doing that, in terms of trying to make social media content interesting and expansive. And I think that is going to continue on even more so, right?
Right. Now, which leads me to ask you this now, as a practicing artist, does that factor into now what you're going to continue to make? Are you now going to be conscientious of making something that is digitally appealing because you know it's going to be more put up virtually than in an actual gallery wall? Like, have you thought that far ahead on that? Because you do have representation actually out here with RJD Gallery, right, in Bridgehampton?
Correct.
Which is only about 30 minutes east of where we are here on Long Island. In fact, Frank shows regularly there. Hopefully, next time he gets out this way, we can take him out for a beer or two. Maybe get you over to the Pollock Krasner house and get you to finally see.
Yes.
If we're allowed out, if we're allowed out at that time.
If we're allowed out.
If not, we'll just go individually and then talk about it after.
Yeah, but like if what I'm trying to get at is, are you going to now have that in the back of your head that you have to produce something knowing it's more about being shown virtually than in the actual gallery? Is that going to affect what you do?
That's a really tough question, because I've been of the mindset that because I have a very traditional approach to painting and just image making in general, seeing those things online will never be the same as seeing it in person.
Right.
And that is going to be the biggest thing to negotiate. So I really am not sure. And I try and use social media to share things. And we were talking already about sharing other people's work. And it's such a great tool to reach out to people all over the world. But yeah, I'm not really certain how that will take over or become more important than seeing the things in person.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping you would kind of go with that way, because I'm thinking I'm going to go back to Casey's work. Seeing Casey's work online is like, wow, that's awesome. It's incredible. I can't believe it's stitched and there's embroidery. And then when you see it in person, which we've had the luxury and we've had the ability to see it, and we've felt lucky to see it. When you see it in person and it's layered, and the intricacy and the way she cross stitches and covers things, and it's literally built off of the surface, that's something you can't get unless you're physically with that piece.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with I keep seeing all of these posts about museum tours and how great they are, and I still have not done them yet.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't know. It just does not seem.
You gotta go. You
Like
gotta go see the work. I mean, that Tom.
Yeah.
If you've been to a gallery with Tom or a museum with Tom, I mean, the guy is like practically inhaling the work, eating the work, touching the work. He's got to get as close as possible to the work
Yeah,
as he possibly can. So I
that's
mean,
true.
the virtual stuff is cool, but
We're lucky we haven't been arrested yet. I mean, that's how close we get. I mean, I've been known to physically get behind the wall and look at the
Yeah.
structure and even the wiring and how it's framed out. I mean, I just have a thirst for that. I need to know everything nuts and bolts from the beginning to the end, because it fascinates me how we all think in different ways to produce imagery that we all share. It's
Right.
it's part of what I need. And just like what you said, I can't bring myself to look virtually at anything right now, because it's also, you're losing the whole environment of being in a museum. Like Mike and I can attest to the Met. The Met is a fantastic physical building, and not being in it, like seeing the arms and armor section with all the knights and the swords and stuff like that. You can't compare that unless you're actually there. There's no
Right.
way.
Yeah, just like I was describing seeing Casey's work for the first time in person, there's something really, it's nothing short of magical, like being when I was overseas and you know, being in Amsterdam and being in their museum and walking down that long corridor, and then you see the Night Watch at the very end of the hallway, just huge. It's you really can't compare it to anything.
No, you
As
you
well
can't.
as well as just being surprised by a piece that you didn't know was in a specific collection, and having seen a piece so many times in books, magazines, online, and then being surprised that it's actually in the collection of the museum that you're at.
Exactly. I can tell you the first Pollock I've ever seen in person, and my kids will make fun of me because I'll be standing there with them. I'll say, no, you don't understand. His hands were on this. Like, this is somebody that I've read about extensively for years and years, and have studied for years and years, and have grown to really admire based on their work, and to know that this person was physically involved, and this was somewhere where that person physically was. You can't get that online at all from anything.
Right.
It's just it's incredible. So I mean, in terms of galleries and museums, we're hoping that this doesn't become a virtual world. But where do you see your own work going into those venues? How do you get your work into those venues to begin with?
In terms of just working with galleries and
Yeah,
things
yeah. Like,
that.
with like, let's say your relationship with RJD. How did that start? How did you get involved with them? How did you become part of their rotating, stable?
I think when they reached out, they were a fairly new gallery. They had been around for maybe a few years, and they certainly had a roster of artists in place. I at that time, it was probably 2011. I was fresh out of grad school, and I had been submitting my work to New American Paintings publication for their regional, I guess you'd call it a regional um, exhibition imprint kind of competition. Um, I had been told by professors for years that it was just a competition that you should always submit to. It can really get the ball rolling on your career. And a lot of the professors that I had already been in that publication. So after about 10 years of submitting, I finally got accepted into their MFA annual because I was fresh out of grad school. So I got into that, and then shortly after it hit shelves, RJD Gallery reached out to me, and that was 2011, 2012, I believe. And I've been working with them since.
how important now is the social media aspect? Because you're on quite a bit. You're very active, at least with the Instagram feed. Do you get hits off of Instagram? Do you get collectors off Instagram? In other words, like, now we're talking about how the world is changing and things are going digital. Do you think now that galleries are going to become kind of obsolete, whereas we have now the ability to just get to collectors on our own, or do you still feel that necessity to have that go between?
I think for younger people, it's certainly a very fast paced and it's just a quick way of looking and seeing things. And that level of interaction, it can be very immediate. But I also think that, once again, what we were just saying, nothing will take the place of going to a show,
Right.
or meeting the artist in person, seeing the artwork inches away. I do try and stay active on there, but and I have had a few collectors from Instagram, but I have been working with galleries since Instagram has sort of been as well known as it is. So I haven't really done many sales through there. It's been difficult just because there's so much out there now, and there's anyone who is making anything can be on there.
Right.
So sort of separating yourself and being making original and interesting content that is just that is further than just posting your work, I think. I'm not someone who separates like my personal and my work stuff. I think that for me, a lot of my personal things and personal life influences my work.
Right.
So I think it's
Absolutely.
really fair to share that together. I know not everybody's on that same level, and that's fine. But
Right. No, but I
yeah,
think that
that's kind of where I'm
yeah, I think anybody who's familiar with your work sees that instant connection, that working class connection that you have, and it's so important for you in your own work. And I think that comes across immediately. I think that that's such an important thing for people to understand, and that's why it makes your feed so successful, is because we don't separate the man from the artist. The man is the artist. I think
right.
that's a huge credit to not only your body of work, but how you get it out there and how you quote unquote sell yourself. What kind of person you are. That's Mike's pulling up your feed right now on your Instagram feed, and that's you can see you there's humor in there, there's personal things in there, there's progress in there, and even on your stories, like I know you and I have this thing where we like to put up what we're watching and what kind of music we're listening to, and it's a great way to get to know someone without physically knowing them as well. Like
Absolutely.
I feel like I know who you are based on how you curate that feed.
Yeah, I was talking with someone the other day about how Instagram has sort of taken over, has taken over for some time now, the like personal blog sort of
True.
things. You don't really see or hear of those as much anymore. And they've found a way to do that, as well as allow people to bring more of their personal content in there.
Yeah. But I mean, like I've known that there's times where I posted something and you DM me. It's like, oh, I remember that song back in whenever, and that's awesome. Or I remember that
Yes.
scene from that movie. That's awesome. So it does give people that ability to connect on another level. It's not just
Besides the art.
oh, right. Besides, like not only is this guy a tremendous painter, but he also likes this music, and I like this music, and he knows this scene from this movie, and that's a great movie, and it draws more of an interest in what you're doing as an artist because I want to know more about everything that you're doing, which I think is a good thing for everybody to get.
I think it's also awesome too. I always love. I'm guilty of it. A little stalkerish, but seeing who you follow and common followers that we follow, and I feel like in a way you almost get to know more about the people by who they follow than from their actual Instagram feed, especially on the art end. I feel like, or you look at an artist and who they follow, and you're like, oh, all right, this is interesting. They follow this person and that person.
Right. Frank, is there anybody? I mean, we know Casey is a huge influence on you. Is there anybody currently now that you're quote unquote insta stalking that you just can't get enough of? Like their work, whenever they post a piece, you're like, oh man, that's a great piece.
As I'm pulling out my phone here to see, oh man, I've been following Tim Okamura's work. Do you know his work?
Oh yeah,
we know Tim.
I've had a crush on his work for years and years, and it's so crazy because I've been following him since like the MySpace days because I saw his work in like a romantic comedy I started watching on TV one day. The one character played by Brian Greenberg, I believe is his name. He plays a painter.
He's a painter.
And so I watched all the way through the end credits to see who the artist was making these paintings. And that was how I found Tim's work. And he's just a really, really phenomenal painter. Speaking of, I have not seen any of his work in person, but seeing some of those side angle texture
is crazy.
Shots of his portraits are insane because he's painting hair and some of it is like raised, inches off of the canvas. It's crazy. And sometimes that comes across in a straight up image and other times you have to see it in person or would have to see it at that angle. Man, it's hard to say off the top of my head because there's so many, and I was a lot more selective about who I was following and what I was seeing, and now it's like, if there are creative people out there who are taking the time to see what I'm sharing and following me, I'm more than likely to follow, and because for younger artists especially. I was telling you guys this this week, this whole thing that you do and the previous interviews that we did on Skype are so cool because that level of access that that is available, it can be such a big tool and so inspiring. And I wish I had that some almost 20 years ago when I was in high school. I didn't know even though there were, of course, countless Cleveland artists, I didn't know any professional artists when I was 16, 17, 18. And I would have loved to have had this kind of opportunity to sort of talk with, listen to, see their work on my phone. All of that is so crazy that we have that opportunity now. So
it is the access that we have to each other now is so beneficial. And that we've talked about this on the last episode with Vic Lee in London. Like, social media for the most part has been blamed for a lot of things and for being intrusive and all the negative talk that it's been used for. But if you really look at people who are responsible with it and use it in a positive way like this, then it's fantastic. Like, I can't imagine, I have my good buddy Mike Goldberg is listening in, and our highlight in high school was just randomly on a trip to the gallery district in Greenwich Village years and years ago. We just stumbled into a gallery and Chuck Close happened to just be there checking in on his work. And we were like, holy crap, like that's, and we talked to him for 10 minutes and he was like this really nice guy. And he was asking us, what we were interested in. And like, that blew my mind, but that was the only chance we had ever had was like just to randomly find somebody. But now it's almost like it's instant. If I wanted to if I want to meet Frank Oriti, I'm going to DM Frank Oriti and say, hey, what's going on? I like your stuff. I'm a fan. What can you tell me? And it's incredible that we have that ability to connect right now. You're right.
Yeah, I've heard many stories of people sort of running into, or being able to connect to those type of artists that are kind of seem untouchable, or just beyond that level of communication, and then the next thing you know, you're having back and forth with them. It certainly has its pros and cons in terms of Instagram and that level of accessibility.
Well, I think there has to be a certain trust factor between people. Like, I know many artists are very protective of their stuff, and nobody wants to give away all their tricks if you don't know who you're talking to, because next thing you know, that person's going to turn around and they're showing what looks like your work, and they're in a gallery and you're not. And that's something understandably that a lot of us have to kind of shield a little bit and not be so open. But I think that if you're genuine about it, like, it was amazing when we reached out to you a couple of years ago, how quickly you were like, yeah, I'm interested in doing that. And it's a great idea that you're doing. And we were so flattered that you'd be, willing to do that. And Casey, the same thing. Like, for us to be able to get artists of your caliber to talk to us and the kids, and just to share what has just been so phenomenal for both MK and myself. I think we look forward to these just as much as the audience does.
Probably more. Probably
yeah,
more.
I think we definitely. I think we fanboy a lot more than most of the other people.
What everybody doesn't know is that when everybody leaves this, we end up talking on it after, and we're like, what? Definitely.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like, oh my God, my head's gonna explode kind of thing, because it's we have such a passion for it and appreciation for it, and we want to bring that to anybody else who shares that interest, because it's a great connector for all of us. And in a time like this, especially, and we talked about it in the last episode too, now's not the time to not connect. Yeah. That's how we feel. And we're very thankful for you being willing to share with us. I think we should open it up. You want to open it up?
Yeah,
MK?
Let's open up to some questions.
Here we go.
We got some questions. Here we go.
Go ahead. You want to unmute?
Let's
unmute.
All right, let's unmute your dad. I hope it's your dad. It just says Thomas this time. It doesn't say
I'm hoping it's
Thomas Senna.
We're gonna find out.
Let's keep our fingers crossed here. Unmuting. All right, there we go. Mr. Senna, you're on.
Hello.
There he is.
Yes, that's him. All right, thank God. Okay.
Hi, Frank.
Hey, how are you?
I have kind of a statement at the same time, and maybe a question. The sneakers that you did, or the ones that Mike showed us. It to me, it told a story. Like, when I looked at it, those sneakers, if they could speak, they could probably tell us a lot. And I'm curious about the artist. You must have had a reason why you wanted those particular sneakers. And I know that I think artists want the viewer to walk away with their own interpretation of what they see. But I would be so interested in finding out, why did the artist select that? What was he trying to tell me? Can you tell me something about that particular painting?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, and thanks for tuning in.
By the way, that's an educator of 40 plus years asking that question, which is why it sounded like a teacher's question.
It's a very good question. I'm still working out a title for this piece, because it is one of the more recently finished piece, but that is a pair of sneakers that I actually own. So I've gone sort of back and forth with painting sneakers that are very unattainable, and sneakers that are super, super expensive that I will probably never own and or be able to even get my hands on. But these are a pair of sneakers that I actually own that are somewhat affordable. And I've always felt like there's this back and forth that I've had when owning any pair of sneakers, in that you want to keep these things clean and keep these things as true to new as possible. And at what point do we sort of let go and say, okay, these are just going to be my everyday beater shoes. I know that if I bring these sneakers into my studio or wear them to work, their lifespan is going to be significantly shortened. So after attempting to clean these things and keep these things nice, neat, and new looking, I sort of just let go and said, you know what, they're going to get dirty, and that's what's going to happen. So I did start wearing them to work, and I work full time at we are a glass and aluminum. We make glass and aluminum wall panels and doors for modern interior spaces, modern office spaces. So I do assembly. I do that sort of manufacturing work. So things get dirty, and so that's kind of what happened with those, and that's why I love painting things that are beat up and worn, and show once again a visual history of sort of a life well lived.
I got a good pair for you, Frank. I got the number one dad shoe is the shoe that I wear. It's rated number 1. It's called the Nike Air Monarchs.
Oh yeah,
Tom, you remember those from Disneyland last year?
Yes.
I got those in Disneyland for our trip to Disney last year, and
those sneakers look like they have coronavirus in them. That's how beat up those suckers are.
If I swab them, they probably do. Yeah, I wear gloves when I put them on. Let's put it that way.
I wanted to buy a pair of those sneakers just to see what all of the dad hype was about, because I know that they are the dad sneaker, chosen by dads all over.
It
They
is.
absolutely have.
Yeah.
What else we got coming in?
All right, here we go. We got another question here. We have one from Allison that says, where did you go to school and who did you study under?
Great question. I will type some of the names in the chat. I went to Bowling Green State University for my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in painting. That's in Northwestern Ohio. And I studied under a painter called Dennis. It's pronounced Wojciechowicz. You have to look him up. He paints really, really insane, hyper real paintings of fruit, which are really, really awesome. So I studied under him, and then I took about a 1.5 year break in between undergrad and grad school. I worked in a steel mill for the majority of that time, and that kind of truly inspired a lot of the portraits that I went on to paint in grad school, of these working class people that I grew up with. And then I went to get my master's degree at Ohio University.
Yeah, we got some other questions coming in. Do you think you're going to go back to portraits?
For a little while, I sort of ruled it out and just kind of got a little burnt out on the portrait painting. But I've sort of learned to not rule anything out ever. So I am still making one here and there. There's some older ones that have kind of come back to. So yeah, I will probably still keep doing it.
Okay, awesome.
Good, because I got to keep picking your brain about painting tattooed skin. Frank has been so crucial. I text him like maybe every couple of weeks. I'm like, bro, how do I get this to the last conversation we had was what kind of varnish, and he gave me a whole tutorial on varnish. I'm very thankful for. But like, if it comes to painting people with tattoos, Frank is 1, and then 1A right under him. I don't know, Frank, if you know Sandy Strom. Have you ever seen
Absolutely.
Sandy Strom? Oh my goodness. Like the quality of the painting of the tattooed skin is just, oh my God, it's off the charts. It's amazing. The two of them together just, if he doesn't go back to painting portraits, I'm screwed. Because I need to keep up with the Jones. I need to keep up with the Joneses and see what he's doing so I can match him.
We got another question.
Her work is. I was just gonna say her work is very awesome to see in person. She was, I don't know if she still is, but she was with the RJD Gallery too, so I got to see plenty of her work in person as well.
We got another question here that says, do you sell prints of your work?
That is not something that I've gotten into yet. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I kind of want to do it at a particular price point that is, doable and affordable to a lot of folks who haven't been able to snag a painting or a drawing. It is something that I'm thinking about.
Right. You want to end up with Mikey G's got a question there at the end? It's a good wrap-up question.
Yeah, I think this is perfect. Is there anything percolating right now? Do you see yourself going in a new direction in the near future?
I'm sort of, I'm always thinking about things. I'm not somebody that really keeps a sketchbook and works out ideas in a sketchbook. I might grab a scrap piece of paper and sort of work out a thumbnail composition. But for the most part, I'm always thinking about ideas and, what this could mean, what this image could mean, or where the work, how it exists or how it moves from one body of work to the next. I'm always thinking about those things. And as I was saying earlier in the conversation, I think I'm going through that period of like trying to figure out what's important and what needs to be made now instead of, and I was saying it earlier, but I was saying it because I'm partially guilty of putting ideas off. I'm guilty of, disregarding things and talking myself out of ideas and saying, oh, that's not important, or I'll do it later. So I'm kind of dealing with that right now of what can I make and why should I make it? Is what I'm making right now relevant? Is it important? I don't know. Yeah. I think at all costs you have to make it fun and interesting for yourself first, and that is a big part of that driving force of staying busy and staying focused.
I think that hits all of us, whether we're still MFA students or fully established blue chippers, or emerging, or wherever we fall within that context, in that category. I think it's a struggle for a lot of us, and the uncertainty that's out there now probably doesn't help a lot of the usually uncertain artists anymore. So, especially now. But I think that what the whole point of this program that MK and I have been doing is to encourage people that this is the time when we need to keep creating. And even if it's just writing things down or playing music or doodling or painting or sculpting or designing shoes or, whatever it is that keeps us focused and sane on some human level, I think that's what we need. And that's, hopefully that's what this program is going to help us get through. So, Frank, I want to thank you for, we've been over, thank God, MK and I, thank God we purchased the unlimited time.
It's an investment. It's an investment.
It is an investment. We were so afraid that we would run out of the 40-minute free time period.
We've gone way past that.
But it's great because we made an executive decision at like 10 o'clock this morning. Like, I think we should pay for it. We definitely got to pay for it.
My computer will be buffering for the next 4 hours to try to process this video, just so you know.
But that's the whole point. Like, I didn't want to cut you short. I knew we had some special people coming in here to talk to us and ask questions from you, and we didn't want to cut anybody off. So I'm glad we made that decision, MK. It was a great thing for us to do. So
worth the $7.
worth the $7.
Yeah.
But Frank, thanks again for your time and for your commitment to our program. And you've always been a guy who's been like, yeah, no problem. I'm all into it. You know, it's been a great experience. Hopefully for everybody else who's been sitting in. And we hope you stay safe in Cleveland, and hopefully it doesn't get like it is here, because it's pretty crazy here right now. So if we can encourage everybody else who hasn't gone through it yet to avoid it, get the word out there that this is no fun at all. Yeah. We want to be able to share with everybody for a long time, so we want to keep everybody safe.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys, for having me, and thanks for everybody tuning in and all the people that will tune in. Thank you.
Yeah.